right. Good morning, everyone. So I believe we have everyone now. We can start.
Okay.
So please go on mute, guys. All right. So today we are going to start with the architecture of IBM BPM, and followed by that we are going to start with the process admin, right? So coming to the architecture diagram. So let me share the diagram with you guys. So this is the architecture diagram of IBM BPM. Now, before we go into and understand each of these components, all right, so I would just like to tell you, like, initially, even now, there are people who recognize IBM BPM into two editions, right? One is the IBM BPM standard, and the other is the IBM BPM advanced, right? So initially, when we used to purchase the license of standard, IBM B standard, we used to get IBM Process Designer as the main tool. And when we purchase the license of IBM BPM Advanced, so along with the Process Designer, we get another tool with it, that is Integration Designer. Now, today we purchase the license of BAW. In that case, we get Integration Design as well, right? So this is the architecture diagram, and you can see we have integration designer as well over here, right? The top right corner, if you see. So this is the architecture diagram of advanced version. Okay. Apart from integration designer, whatever you see, whatever components you see, all these components are available in the standard version as well as in the advanced version also. So let's understand the components one by one. So yesterday I gave some overview on few of these components, not everything, not on everyone. So we'll be discussing on each of these components now. So if you see in the middle, we have something called process center, right? And nowadays people do call it as workflow center as well. Now process center, as we know, as we discussed yesterday, it is the BPM repository. And if we go inside the process center, we'll be able to find the assets and whatever applications and toolkits are available. I'll be able to see all those things inside the process center. That is considered to be as the BM repository, right? Now, if you see at the top, we have the process center console, right? And process center console is the console through which we can view the BPM repository, right? And what do we see in the repository? We see the different process applications and toolkits. Now, if you see, it says that manage the process center console is used to manage process applications and toolkits. Now, managing a process application. Now, definitely we know that yesterday also we created a process application from there that we are aware of. Now, say if there is a developer who has joined the team and who wants to access, say, a process application, say, leave application, right? Now, he might not have the access of that process. So, we can manage the process app from the process center in a way that I can give an access to someone who is joining the team as a developer. Okay. Only if I give the access to him through the process center, only in that case he would be able to access that process application, and not only access, he can also create new artifacts, right? So this is the first and foremost thing that we do whenever we start working on a project, start working on any process app. The first thing is we have to find out whether we have that access or not for that process application. Similarly, for toolkits as well, we can also manage a toolkit inside a process application. So if I have the access of the toolkit, then I can definitely go inside the toolkit and I can make changes to the toolkit. If I don't have the access of changing anything in the toolkit, then I can definitely go inside, but all the properties and all the components inside that toolkit will be read only to me. I will not be able to change anything inside that toolkit. Okay, so for like a similar way we give an access to a developer for a process application, the same way we also give access to a toolkit for a developer. We'll be seeing this thing, okay, later on we'll see how we can give an access and how for a process application and toolkit from the processor. We'll be seeing this later. Now coming to process designer. Process designer is definitely the authoring environment for the authors or for the developers. And what we can do inside a process designer, we can create the different artifacts, the processes, whatever are available, whatever components are available, like processes, services, business objects, any kind of events. All these things can be created through the process designer, right? And yesterday we have learned that process designer are of two types. One is the desktop process designer that comes in the process center from which we can download it, and the other is the web designer or the web based process designer, and that also can be accessed if I go inside a process center. If I want to open any process application, then in that case it opens the web designer, right? So we can navigate from the process center as well to the web designer. Now not only we can create artifacts, we can also test those artifacts inside a process designer, right? Now process designer, it actually consists of two views. One is the development where we do the development and everything, that's called the designer view, and the other is the inspector view where we generally test a process or test any service. Okay, so one is the designer view and the other is the inspector view. Whether you are using a desktop designer or a web based process designer, doesn't matter, both the designers will have both these views, right? That is the process designer. Coming to the integration designer, guys, so this is a tool which is considered as a middleware tool through which you can actually integrate multiple systems together, right? Although we are not going to cover integration designer in our sessions, we are more concerned about the IBM BPM. But yes, if someone asks you like what an integration designer does, I'll give a very simple example. Say there is an SAP application, right? And there is a B application. Now, whatever code I am writing in BPM, not necessarily the SAP application will understand that, right? Whatever objects I'm creating in BPM, not necessarily that SAP application will understand that object. Similar way, if I'm developing an SAP application, then not necessarily whatever artifacts I'm creating in that SAP BPM will understand those, right? They are those different platforms altogether. So there must be someone in the middle who would help me to convert the business object of BPM into an SAP object. Similarly, there should be someone who would convert the SAP code or object into the BPM code or object, right? So who does this? It's a middleware, and there are different middleware technologies. Like we have also MuleSoft, which is also very famous and also very popular these days. Similar way, IBM Integration Designer is one of the oldest tools that we have in the middleware technology and the most trusted one in the middleware technology, right? So nowadays, if you're purchasing the license of BAW, you also get integration designer with it, right? Very important tool. I would recommend people should learn this tool as well. Okay, like you are taking the training of IBM BPM, also we should know integration designer. So this is IID or integration designer. Now, if you see below, we have something called process server. What is process server? We learned yesterday. Process server is my runtime platform, correct? Without this, my application will not run. Whatever I am creating, whatever artifacts I have created, those artifacts will never run if you don't have a process server or if your process server is down. Now, the question is, yesterday when we were discussing about the development environment or in the testing environment. So how do we consider this that, say for example, if I'm installing the IBM BPM in a development environment, right? So I'll be showing the installation. So we'll be discussing on that today. So whenever you are installing the IBM BPM for a development environment, there is an option that comes. One is install process center and the other option comes as install process server. So I can select either of them at one go. So when I'm installing IBM BPM in the development environment, I am selecting install process center. But when I am installing IBPM for any test environment or for production environment, there we select install process server. Now, over here, if we are selecting install process center, that does not mean that the process server will not be installed in the development environment. It will still be installed. And similarly, in case of my testing environment or my production environment, if I'm selecting install process server, that doesn't mean that the process center will not be installed. Then what is the difference that happens? Difference is very simple. Whenever I'm selecting install process center, that time inside the process center, I will get the link of downloading process designer. And also next to every process application, I will have that option of open in designer, which we saw yesterday. But if I'm installing the IBM BPM for any test environment or for any production environment, and I'm selecting install process server, if I log into process center, I will not be able to see any option of downloading the desktop process designer, and I will not be able to access the designer as well, right? So by selecting install process server, you are actually making IBM BPM understand, okay, so I want to install this in some test environment or some production environment. That's the reason I don't need any designer over there. And if I'm selecting install process center, so it means that I am actually installing the IBM BPM for the development environment, right? So we'll go through this whenever we do the installation. So that time I'll be showing you like which option to choose when, and we'll be discussing on that. So process server is my runtime environment, and from where we manage the process server, we have something called VAS admin console or WebSphere application server admin console, through which we can manage the runtime environment or the process server. At any point of time, whenever you are doing the development, if you are seeing that your server is becoming slow or if server has gone down, what we generally do, we tell the admin team that guys, please do the restart of the server. So what they do, they log into the VAS admin console and from there they restart the server, right? Similar way, if for any test environment or for any production environment, if you find that the server has gone slow, then we need to inform the infra team or the admin team, and they will log into this VAS admin console and they will restart the server. Okay, so I can manage the server from the VAS admin console. I can stop it at any point of time. I can start, I can make a restart as well from there. Going to the VAS admin console, there are many features over there. Okay, VAS admin console, by the name you can understand, this is a completely admin tool. Not only you can manage the server, you can manage everything from there. You can manage the global security, you can manage the data sources, whatever database today I'm installing, right? Say for example, I have installed Oracle. I want to create a connection between Oracle and BPM, right? So for that, what is the first thing that we have to do? We have to create the data source. So where we can create the data source, we can create it inside the VAS admin console. If I have to find out some system logs, where I can find that? I can find that in the VAS admin console. Okay. So there are many features over there. We are going to discuss about few. So we'll have a session on the VAS admin console where I'm going to show you some very basic things which we as a developer should be knowing, okay, from the was admin console. Yes, somebody has some question. I can hear some noise. Okay. All right. So this is about my was admin console and process server. Now coming to the process admin console. Process admin console, yes, here also we can manage our server. Okay, we can check how the server is, whether it's healthy or not. So apart from seeing the server, we can find out the different caches over there. If someone user wants, if some developer is joining the team, we can create the user credentials for that person, for the developer. We can create groups over there where we can add certain users and we can use them in the BPM application. We can monitor the performance of the process and the services over here. Okay, say tomorrow if the customer comes and tells that that your application is running very slowly, right? Your application is very slow in production. So I can log into the process admin and I can go and find out, there is a place called monitoring. I can go and find out what is the performance of my process. If any process or any service is taking a lot of time to execute, it will show you over there that this process or this service is taking a lot of time. Not only that, I can also go inside that process in process admin and I can find out at which point it is taking a lot of time to execute. Accordingly, if I'm a developer, I can go back to my code and I can optimize my code accordingly. Okay, so these features are there. Apart from this, there are a lot more features in process admin. So from the process admin, I can navigate into a component called process inspector. Very similar to what we seeing like the inspector view. Like we have an inspector view in the process designer, that is for the development environment. Similarly, we have process inspector as well, through which also we can inspect on each and every case or each and every instance. Okay, so we can modify the data. We can, if there is some data issue, we can modify the data. If some case fails, we can retry that case from the process inspector. All these features are there. Okay, so we'll have a session on the process inspector. We have a session, so we'll cover those features that time. Okay, so this is my process admin console. We're going to start with process admin console today. So we'll see what features are there. Next is process portal. Process portal is basically the portal through which I can participate in the process, right? Say whenever we are designing some process, so what basic component that we add in the process is a user activity, right? What is a user activity? It is activity that we create which is accessed by some end user. A user activity, so basic two types of activities are there. One is a user activity and the other is a system activity, right? So user activity needs a human intervention where there will be some UI and some human or some end user will be accessing that UI. Maybe some application form is there, right? Maybe I have to go and fill up that application form. So if I am a human being, I'm trying to access the process. And how I'm accessing the process? I'm accessing it with the help of a UI. And from where I can access this UI? I can access it through the process portal. Okay. So in a very simple way, process portal is the component through which an end user interacts with the process. Right? Now, coming in a bigger way, if I'm discussing this process portal in a bigger way, process portal is the place through which I can manage my work list. As simple as that. Say, if I am an employee, right? And say Sarvana is the manager. Now, if I want to apply a leave, say I log into process portal and fill up some application form and I submit that. Sarvana will receive a task. Okay. So he will also log into his process portal with his credentials. I logged into process portal with my credentials. He would log into the process portal with his credentials. Whenever he logs in, he would find a work list over there. Okay, what is a work list? Work list will show what are the tasks that are assigned to him. Okay, it will have the task name, it will have when the task was assigned to him, it will show what, when, by which time the task has to be completed, what is the priority of the task. If it has the highest priority, then that task should be completed before. If the task has a lowest priority, then he can take that later as well, right? So like this, we have a work list over there, and in that work list we have the different tasks. And whenever Sarvana receives a task which I have submitted for my leave application, he claims that task from there and he takes an action. He either approves my leave or rejects my leave. So we all are participating in this leave application process through the process portal, right? Any user task can be accessed through the process portal. Okay, we'll see all these things, so don't worry, don't get confused. So we'll have all the things like process portal, process admin, whatever components you are seeing, except IID, integration designer. We are going to see each and everything, each and every component in details, right? All right. Any questions, guys, on the architecture? Do come up with questions. Okay, it's an active session. Don't feel shy to ask any questions.
Hello. Um,
Yes.
yeah, actually, Nisar here. Actually, hi Rahul.
Hi, Nisar. Tell me.
Yeah, yeah. Um, as you begin with this my tutorial, I noticed I noticed that you said something like we can integrate the this IBM BPM with SAP, right?
Hmm.
SAP or SAP you mentioned.
Yes, sir.
It,
Yeah.
the same like actually if do we have something like different the Microsoft architecture .NET framework application
Hmm.
will be able to
Yes.
integrate the same application as well with this
Yes.
IBM AP.
Yes,
Okay.
you can. You can. And I just give an example.
Yeah, yeah.
So instead of SAP application, any application you can integrate with BPM. Not only with BPM. I mean, even you leave out BPM. Say you have an
Mm-hmm.
SAP application and a Java application. You can even
Mm-hmm.
integrate them with the help of IID. Okay. So
Okay.
IID is a middleware tool which is used to integrate multiple systems together. Not necessarily BPM has to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Since we are discussing BPM, that's the reason I gave an example of BPM over here. Okay.
Okay. Fine.
Okay. Any other queries, guys? Shall we move on to the
So
next
Rahul,
topic?
this is Kirtana.
Yeah, hi,
Actually,
Kirtana.
whenever we hear about process designer and integration designer, we naturally come
Hmm,
across terms like SOA and SCA. So can you
correct.
just briefly elaborate on them? Because I always get confused with these terms like SOA and SCA. So just high level.
Yes. So for that, I have also have to go through integration designers. So I have worked on integration designer like 6, 7 years back. So basically, these are services. Okay, as far as I remember, SCA and SO, these are kind of services. SCA service is being used uh, for integrating BPM application with an external application. I can say this confidently. The reason being, in my project, we have a SCA service which interacts with an external application to get some data from there. Okay, so we have a BPM application. It interacts with another external application to get some data, and this interaction is being done with the help of a SCA service. Okay, exact term I'll let you know, SOA and SCA. So if you want some information on this, I can definitely share. So maybe tomorrow, whenever we connect, I'll share the information with you. Okay, you can just ping that in the chat. So
Sure,
I'll
Rahul.
just make a note. and we'll discuss tomorrow. Yeah.
Sure, Rahul. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Any other queries, guys? All right. Then let's move on. Let's move on to our next topic. I'll just pause my screen a moment. I'll just log in. All right. Okay. So now, if you see, I am actually in the process admin and I have to enter my credentials to log into process admin. So whatever components we saw, guys, just before we were discussing about the architecture, if I have to log into any of those components, I will need some credentials. Okay. Now the thing is where we can create the credentials. So definitely process admin is actually the place through which we create the credentials. Now, if I have to create my credentials, right, then how do we log into process admin for the first time? Because we create the credentials for all the users and the developers over here, right? So whenever you are installing the IBM BPM, so that time we create some admin credentials at that time. Okay. Whenever the installation is in progress, that time we have to create some admin credentials. With the help of those admin credentials, we need to log in for the first time in process admin, and then we can go and whatever we want to create. If you want to create some users, then we can go and create those users, and then we can use them. We can use those user credentials to log into all those components, whatever we saw: VAS admin, process portal, process center, process designer, right? So all these components will need login credentials. Coming to the integration designer, no, we don't need any credentials to access IID or integration designer. So integration designer is completely based on the Eclipse. If you have worked on Eclipse in Java, so it is very similar to Eclipse. So it doesn't need any credentials to access whatever projects or whatever applications are created inside the IID. Okay. But for all the BPM components, we need credentials to log in and access those components. So I had also created a credential for mine. So I'm going to use that. But that, just see what is the URL for this process admin. So I'm just opening a notepad. So I'll just replace them with host name and port number. So this is the URL for the process admin. So it's host name, like you have HTTPS followed by host name, port number, then you have the process admin, and slash we have the login.jsp, right? So this is the URL for the process admin. Now I'm going to log in with my credential, and now I'm inside the process admin. If you see at the top, we have these three tabs over here: server admin, process inspector, and installed apps. Okay. Server admin, by the name you can understand this is completely for the admin team. Yes, basically process admin is anyways, it is a component for the admin. For a developer, yes, we do have some features which we can use from here as a developer, but mainly whatever features we have, 99% of them are for the admin or for the infra team. Okay. The next component is process inspector. Very important component for us, guys. Not only we will be knowing, so in our sessions, whatever we are going to go through, not only will be knowing how to develop an application, but also will have sessions where we will understand how to debug an issue. right? Whenever some issue comes, whenever you're deploying some application to say test environment, say you have a release next month. Today you deploy the application to say UAT, right? So testers will be testing there, and somehow if they find some issue, maybe some instance has failed, they are not able to access the instance maybe from the process portal, right, while testing. So they will come to the developers saying that this application or this particular workflow is not working, right? So how to debug that issue? So process inspector is the component through which we can debug any instance which fails. We can even retry a failed instance over here to the inspector. So for a developer, process inspector is very, very important. So we'll be discussing on this component. We have a session on process inspector as well as REST API. That time we'll see how we can debug some issue. Okay. Next is installed apps. Installed apps is related to something, maybe say if I want to deploy something, then in that case, installed apps is a very important component of your process admin. Okay, if I have to do some migration, okay, say I have one snapshot or one version already deployed in UAT. Now I am deploying a new snapshot. So how we can migrate the older instances to the new snapshot? So all these things can be done from the installed apps. Whatever version I am deploying to any UAT environment or to any production environment, I can access the properties of those snapshot through the installed apps. Okay, we'll have a session on this as well, so don't worry. So uh, we have some session on the deployment and migration, snapshots, tracks, all these things we have. That time we'll cover the installed apps.